A320 fuel system is very much like a conventional jet aircraft fuel system. It has fuel tanks located in the center fuselage area and the wings. The center tank is located in the fuselage. The inner and outer tanks are located in the wings. The total usable fuel quantity is approximately 19,000 kilograms, standard density. 2 fuel pumps are installed in the center tank, and 2 fuel pumps are installed in each inner tank. 2 transfer valves allow fuel to transfer from the outer tanks to the inner tanks. Each inner tank feeds its respective engine. 2 engine low-pressure valves are installed to cut off fuel to the engines. The center tank also feeds the engines. A cross-feed valve is fitted to connect or isolate the left and right sides. The fuel system also feeds the APU. A low-pressure valve is fitted to cut off fuel to the APU. This represents the basic fuel system. We will now see how this information is presented to the pilots in the cockpit. Click on the schematic to display the ECAM fuel page. You can see that all the components we have talked about are displayed on the ECAM page. Let's briefly review the basic system using the ECAM fuel page. The center tank in the fuselage, the inner tanks in the wings, the outer tanks in the wings, the fuel pumps, the transfer valves, the engine low-pressure valves, the cross-feed valve, the APU low-pressure valve. But for the purpose of clarity, we have left out some indications. Click on the ECAM page to display them. These indications are outer tank fuel quantity, inner tank fuel quantity, center tank fuel quantity. Fuel on board, FOB, fuel used quantity, outer tank temperature, inner tank temperature. The fuel panel is located on the overhead panel. Each wing tank pump is controlled by its associated push-button switch on the fuel panel. Each center tank pump is controlled by its respective push-button switch. The mode selector push-button switch enables the pilot to run the 2 center tank pumps in automatic or manual mode. This will be explained in detail in the normal and abnormal operation modules. The cross-feed push-button switch enables the pilot to connect or isolate the left and right sides of the fuel system. Once again, you will operate all these controls and see the associated indications in the normal and abnormal operation modules. During the walk-around, you must check several items which are part of the fuel system. These items are not major components, but a check of their condition is very important. Fuel can be measured manually by the magnetic fuel level indicators located in each fuel tank. We are looking at a magnetic fuel level indicator in the right inner tank. It should be flush with the aircraft surface. We are looking at the water drain valve in the right inner tank. Each tank has a water drain valve. You should check that there is no water leaking from the valve. If there is a leak, call maintenance. A refuel panel is located on the fuselage side beneath the right wing. You should check that the refuel panel access door is closed. A single refueling point is installed under the right wing. You should check that the refuel coupling door is closed. Note: another refueling point can be installed under the left wing as an option. A surge tank is connected to the outer tank in each wing tip. These small tanks protect the system against overpressure and thermal expansion. You cannot monitor or control surge tanks from the cockpit. The surge tank inlet should be clear of any blockage. There is also a shroud drain mast, which drains fuel that could leak from the system. You should check that there is no fuel leaking from the mast. The items related to the fuel system during the walk-around have all been seen. We will now discuss items related to the fuel system that you will encounter during cockpit preparation. To better illustrate what occurs in the fuel system, select the ECAM fuel page using the ECAM control panel. With the pumps in the off position, observe the symbology on the ECAM. The pumps are cross-line amber. During cockpit preparation, all white lights in the cockpit must be extinguished. Switch on left tank pump 1 and observe the ECAM indications. Left tank pump 1 on the ECAM fuel page is inline green, indicating that the pump is running. Continue by switching on left tank pump 2. Left tank pump 2 is now also running. Click on the forward arrow to finish switching the center and right tank pumps on. All the pumps are now running. Before you continue, you observe a message on the engine warning display. Click on the forward arrow to display the engine warning display. The message "Refueling" displayed on the engine warning display indicates that the refuel control panel door is open. Now let's continue the pre-flight by inserting the fuel weight in the MCDU. We have typed the fuel weight in the scratch pad for you. Note: you can insert the fuel weight in the MCDU while refueling is in progress. Enter the fuel weight in the MCDU. Click on the forward arrow to continue. A few minutes later, you observe that the refueling message on the engine warning display has disappeared, indicating that refueling is complete and the refueling control panel door is closed. Now that the fuel weight has been entered, let's verify the FOB. Note: the minimum fuel quantity for takeoff is 1500 kilograms. Verify that the fuel on board quantity on the engine warning display and on the ECAM fuel page corresponds to the fuel required by the computerized flight plan. Verify also the fuel distribution in the different tanks. It's now time to start the APU. Before we start it, notice that the APU low pressure valve is closed, crossline green, and the fuel line downstream from the low pressure valve is amber, indicating the APU is not running. We have started the APU for you. On the ECAM fuel page, you can see that the APU is running because the APU low pressure valve has opened, inline green, and the fuel line downstream is green. The items related to the fuel system during cockpit preparation have all been seen. We will now discuss items related to the fuel system that you will encounter during engine start. The indications and starting procedures are the same for both engines. In our example, we will start engine 2 first. Normally, during engine start, the ECAM engine page will be automatically displayed. For training purposes only, to better illustrate what occurs in the fuel system, the ECAM fuel page will be presented. Select the ECAM fuel page on the ECAM control panel. Before we start the engine, observe the following. The engine low pressure valves are cross-line amber to indicate closure. The fuel used quantities remain from the previous flight. Engine identification numbers are amber. This is because the engines are not running. On the engine warning display, the fuel flow, FF, indicates amber crosses. Engine 2 is starting. Observe, the low pressure valve is inline green. The fuel used indication automatically resets to 0. On the engine warning display, fuel flow starts. The engine identification number 2 changes to white. The gross weight GW has now appeared. Click on the forward arrow to start engine number 1. Engine 1 is starting. Observe, the low pressure valve is inline green. The fuel used indication automatically resets to 0. On the engine warning display, fuel flow starts. The engine identification number 1 changes to white. Observe the message, Center Tank Feeding, has appeared on the ECAM engine warning display. This indicates that the center tank pumps are feeding the engines. The items related to the engine start have all been seen. We will now discuss items related to the fuel system that you will encounter during taxi. When we extend the slats, you will see one of the automatic functions of the center tank pumps. Notice that the mode selector push-button switch is set to auto. Extend the slats and observe the indications. Observe the flaps extending. The message Center Tank Feeding disappears. On the ECAM fuel page, the center tank pumps are cross-line green, indicating that they have stopped running automatically. The inner tank pumps now feed the engines for takeoff. Items related to taxi have all been seen. We will now discuss items related to the fuel system that you will encounter during normal climb, cruise and descent. You are in climb. The slats are now retracted. Observe the center tank feeding message reappears. This indicates, at slats retraction, the center tank pumps are again feeding the engines. This is another automatic function of the center tank pumps with the mode selector push button in auto position. Select the ECAM fuel page on the ECP. Observe the corresponding pump indications on the ECAM, in line green. You are now in cruise. Notice the center tank feeding message has again disappeared, indicating that the center tank pumps have automatically shut off. However, the center tank is not empty and an auto function has again occurred. To explain why, we must look at fuel recirculation. Some fuel to the engines is diverted to cool the integrated drive generators, IDGs, then returns to the wing tanks. If the engines are fed from the center tank and the wing tanks are full, the center tank pumps automatically shut off. The inner tank pumps take over and feed the engines, so that there is room for fuel from the IDGs. After the inner tank pumps have fed approximately 500 kilograms of fuel, the center tank pumps automatically restart. You are in descent. To better illustrate the remaining indications, we will keep the ECAM fuel page displayed. The center tank pumps have automatically shut off, crossline green, because the center tank is empty. The inner tanks are now again feeding the engines. Let's see what happens when the inner tanks reach a low level. When either inner tank reaches a low level limit, both transfer valves open automatically, transferring fuel from the outer to the inner tanks. When at least one transfer valve is open, the message "Outer tank fuel transferred" is displayed on the engine warning display. Click on either outer tank and observe the fuel transferring. The fuel is now totally transferred and the outer tanks are empty. The items related to the fuel system during climb, cruise and descent have all been seen. We will now discuss items related to the fuel system that you will encounter post-flight. After the engines are shut down, the fuel pumps are switched off. Switch off left tank pump 1. Left tank pump 1 is off. Crossline amber. Continue by switching off left tank pump 2. Click on the forward arrow to finish switching the center and right tank pumps off. Observe the transfer valves remain open. They will be automatically closed during the next refueling operation. This is a demonstration of a failure of the center tank pumps. You are in cruise with the aircraft operating normally. Click on the forward arrow to activate the failure. On the engine warning display, read the title of the failure. The ECAM caution, Center Tank Pump 1 Low Pressure, appears amber, meaning that center tank pump 1 has failed. Notice that the ECAM fuel page is automatically displayed. Notice the corresponding indications. On the ECAM page, low boxed amber means the pump is on but not producing adequate pressure. And on the fuel control panel, the fault light is illuminated amber on the center tank pump 1 push-button switch. The pilot flying will ask you to perform the ECAM actions. Perform ECAM action. Observe that the on light illuminates white on the crossfeed push-button switch to indicate that the valve is opening. The crossfeed valve is shown amber during the valve transit. The open light illuminates green when the valve is fully open. On the ECAM page, the crossfeed valve is inline green. This allows both engines to be fed from the center tank using center tank pump 2. Note, if you do not open the crossfeed valve, engine 1 receives fuel from the left inner tank and an imbalance will occur. Continue ECAM action. On the center tank pump 1 push-button switch, the amber fault light disappears and is replaced by the white off light, indicating that the pump has been turned off. On the ECAM fuel page, the low indication disappears and is replaced by an amber cross line, meaning that center tank pump 1 has been manually switched off. The abnormal procedure is complete. The fuel system is analyzed. After review and confirmation from the pilot flying, clear fuel. The center tank feeding memo indicates that the center tank is feeding the aircraft, and the fuel cross-feed memo indicates that the cross-feed valve is open. On the status page, center tank pump 1 appears amber in the inoperative system column. After review and confirmation from the pilot flying, clear status. ECAM action completed. You are continuing in cruise. Remember that center tank pump 1 has failed. Let's see what happens if center tank pump 2 also fails. Click on the forward arrow to activate the failure. On the engine warning display, the amber message "Center tank pumps low pressure" means that both center tank pumps have failed. You have the same indications as you had for center tank pump 1 failure. Low boxed amber on the ECAM page and the amber fault light on the fuel control panel. The pilot flying will ask you to perform the ECAM actions. Perform ECAM action. Observe the following indications. On the fuel panel, both center tank pumps are off. On the engine warning display, the fob has a half amber box. This means that some of the indicated total fuel on board is not usable. On the ECAM fuel page, the fuel on board fob value is boxed amber, meaning that not all fob is usable. The center tank pumps are cross-line amber, meaning that they have been manually shut off. The center tank quantity is boxed amber, meaning that the center tank fuel is not usable. After review and confirmation from the pilot flying, clear fuel. The status page indicates the following. A green message states that the center tank fuel is unusable. The center tank pumps are inoperative. This is indicated in amber. After review and confirmation from the pilot flying, clear status. ECAM actions completed. We learned from the ECAM actions and the indications associated with center tank pump failures that losing one center tank pump requires opening the crossfeed valve to prevent a fuel imbalance. Losing both center tank pumps means center tank fuel is unusable. You are still in cruise. All systems are restored and operating normally. We are now going to study the failure of the inner tank pumps. Click on the forward arrow to activate the failure. The amber message, left tank pump 1 low pressure, on the engine warning display means that the left tank pump 1 has failed. The ECAM fuel page appears automatically with the corresponding pump indication. Note, the master caution and the single chime are not triggered as the tank has another pump for redundancy. The pilot flying will ask you to perform the ECAM actions. Perform ECAM action. Observe, on the fuel panel, the amber fault light in the left tank pump 1 push-button switch is replaced by the white off light. On the ECAM page, the amber low indication is replaced by an amber cross line, indicating that the pump is off. After review and confirmation from the pilot flying, clear fuel. The inoperative system is left tank pump 1, indicated in amber. After review and confirmation from the pilot flying, clear status. ECAM action completed. We are continuing in cruise. Remember that left tank pump 1 has failed. Let's see what happens if left tank pump 2 fails. The amber message, fuel left tank pump 1 plus 2 low pressure, on the engine warning display means that both left tank pumps have failed. Once again, the ECAM fuel page appears automatically. The pilot flying will ask you to perform the ECAM actions. Perform ECAM action. The left tank pump 2 indications are the same as for the left tank pump 1 shown previously. After review and confirmation from the pilot flying, clear fuel. The left tank pumps are inoperative. This is indicated in amber. Note, at this time, the center tank pumps are still feeding the engines. When fuel from the left tank is required, refer to your documentation for gravity fuel feeding. After review and confirmation from the pilot flying, clear status. ECAM actions completed. We learned from the ECAM actions and indications associated with the left tank pump failures that losing one inner tank pump is not so critical. No master caution, because of redundancy, 2 pumps. Losing both inner tank pumps means using gravity fuel feeding if necessary. Refer to your documentation. Now let's see some other abnormal indications that you can have on the ECAM fuel page. If on the engine warning display, the FOB indication is displayed with 2 dashes across the 2 last digits, the fuel quantity indicator, FQI, is in degraded mode. Select the ECAM fuel page on the ECP to determine which tank is affected. You can see that the affected tank is the left outer tank. The two amber dashes indicate a loss of accuracy of the indicated fuel quantity. Also notice that the fuel temperature can appear amber, associated with an ECAM message and a single chime if a high or low limit is detected. In our case, the outer tank temperature has exceeded the low limit. On the ECAM fuel page, the left transfer valve is displayed in amber, meaning that it is closed when it should have automatically opened. The fuel in the left outer tank is no longer usable.